In the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, the long summer twilight lingered on. Margaret Williams was tending to her roses in her backyard garden, listening to the laughter of children drifting over from the neighboring house. She had finally retired last year after working as a nurse for 35 years. Ever since losing her husband 10 years ago, the center of her life had been her son, David, and his family. David was a man who worked as a project manager at a construction company and had remarried a year ago. His first wife, Sarah, had died of breast cancer when Emma was 2 years old. For 3 years after that, David had raised his daughter alone while receiving support from Margaret. Then, last spring, he met Ashley, who worked part-time as a clerk at a local accounting firm. Ashley also had a 2-year-old son named Tyler from her previous marriage. After her divorce, she had returned to her parents' home and was working while raising her son. David and Ashley's relationship progressed relatively quickly, and they decided to marry after 6 months. Though Margaret was initially surprised, she wished for her son's happiness and warmly welcomed the new family. The wedding was held at a small church, with 4-year-old Emma participating in the ceremony, carrying an adorable bouquet. Ashley wore a white lace dress, smiling happily despite her nervousness. Tyler was shy and stayed small on David's lap, but Emma was curious about her new family. Margaret felt hopeful about this new family structure as she watched her granddaughter accept her stepmother and little brother. After the marriage, Ashley earnestly tried to be a good stepmother. She learned Emma's favorite foods, went shopping with her, and read picture books to her at night. Emma, though initially confused, tried to accept Ashley as her new mama. Tyler and Emma were close in age, and they were often seen playing together like siblings. On weekends, Margaret would invite this new family for dinner. Ashley would bring homemade dishes, and David would play with the children in the yard. On the surface, they seemed to be building an ideal family relationship. Ashley also showed respect toward Margaret, calling her the mom with affection. However, recently, Margaret had begun to notice small changes. Emma visited her less frequently and spoke less actively than before. When Margaret asked David over the phone, he replied, "She just needs time to adjust to the new environment." Ashley also spoke honestly, saying, "Emma sometimes seems to miss her real mother. I'm doing my best, but it's difficult since we're not blood-related." Margaret, with her experience as a former nurse, understood that it takes time for children to adapt. Marriage and divorce were major changes even for adults, and even more so for children. She recognized Ashley's efforts and thought about deepening family bonds gradually over time. On a hot summer day, Margaret was cleaning the pool in her yard while planning to host a pool party for the whole family. Emma loved playing in water, and it would be a fun time for Ashley and Tyler, too. She called her son and suggested a pool party for the weekend. David gladly agreed, and he told her that Ashley was also looking forward to it. Margaret wholeheartedly supported this new family structure. She believed that with love and understanding, people could become family even without blood ties. Seeing Ashley's efforts and sincerity, she was confident that time would resolve everything. With the arrival of autumn, Margaret's anxiety began to take concrete form. Phone calls from David became more frequent than before, and their content had changed. They shifted from work talk and general updates to consultations about Emma's condition. "Mom, Emma hasn't been eating much lately." David's voice was tinged with confusion. "Ashley works so hard to make meals, but Emma barely touches them." Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with It Stories. No face, no voice. Check a link in the description if you're curious. She even leaves the macaroni and cheese she used to love. Margaret adjusted her grip on the receiver and answered, "In new environments, appetite can decrease. But how long has this been going on?" "About 3 weeks now. Also, I sometimes wake up to crying in the middle of the night. When Ashley goes to check on her, Emma quiets down immediately." On the other end of the phone, David sighed tiredly. The long hours at the construction site, combined with problems at home, were weighing heavily on his shoulders. And Margaret could sense this. What does Ashley say about it? She's doing her best. She makes things Emma might like, takes her to the park, but she often says it's difficult because there's no blood connection. A few days later, Ashley came to Margaret's house alone. Tyler was at a neighborhood playgroup, and Emma was at kindergarten. Ashley sat at the kitchen table holding her coffee cup with both hands. To be honest, I sometimes don't know what to do. Ashley's voice was small, and tears welled up in her eyes. Emma is a good child, but sometimes the way she looks at me, it's like I'm an intruder. Margaret smiled gently and placed her hand over Ashley's. You're really doing well. Emma will accept you over time. But I can interact naturally with Tyler, yet I feel tense around Emma since she's not my biological child. I don't know how strict I should be with her. Ashley made a gesture as if holding her head. Just yesterday, when Tyler broke Emma's toy, I didn't know how to handle it. Emma was crying. But since Tyler is my child, I almost instinctively took his side. Using her experience as a former nurse and mother, Margaret gave Ashley advice. The role of a stepmother is certainly difficult, but your desire to love Emma will surely get through to her. Take time to build a trusting relationship from small things. That weekend, Margaret decided to take care of Emma by herself. David and Ashley would spend time alone together for the first time in a while, and Tyler would play at his grandmother's house. Emma wasn't as lively as before, but she spent time with Margaret making cookies and picking flowers in the garden. Emma, how is your new home? Is it fun? Margaret asked casually. Emma kneaded the cookie dough with her small hands and answered, Well, sort of. Previously, she would have said, It's so much fun, with sparkling eyes. Are you getting along with Tyler? Tyler is still small, so I don't really understand him, but sometimes he breaks my toys. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in Emma's voice. Margaret chose her words carefully. Is Ashley Mama kind? Emma stopped what she was doing and showed a thoughtful expression for a while. Yes, she's kind, but she seems to like Tyler better. That evening, Margaret called David. About Emma's condition. There are some things that concern me, but I'm sure time will solve it. Ashley is really trying hard too. That's right. Ashley is really doing well. I'm busy and leave everything at home to her, so I feel sorry about that. In mid-October, Margaret invited the whole family for dinner. Ashley brought homemade apple pie, and the children played in the yard. On the surface, the family bond seemed to be deepening. During the meal, Ashley reported on Emma's recent condition. Little by little, her appetite is returning. Yesterday, she finished all the spaghetti I made. David showed a relieved expression. That's good. Maybe Mom's advice worked. However, Margaret felt something was off about Emma's expression. It wasn't the innocent smile from before, but seemed somehow forced. She was also bothered by the subtle difference between Ashley's voice when speaking to Tyler and when speaking to Emma. After dinner, while the children watched TV in the living room, the adults were cleaning up in the kitchen. Ashley said happily while washing dishes, Recently, Emma has started calling me Mama. That's wonderful, Margaret smiled. But somewhere in her heart, a small alarm bell was ringing. That night, after the family had gone home, Margaret stood alone in the kitchen thinking. Ashley was certainly making an effort. Emma also seemed to be adapting to the new family on the surface. However, her years of experience as a nurse told her that there was something she was overlooking. There's always a reason for changes in children's behavior. Loss of appetite, night crying, and the lack of previous liveliness. Were these simply part of the adaptation process? Margaret looked out at the dark yard through the window and felt she needed to observe her granddaughter's small changes more carefully. On a weekend, when the unusual November warmth continued, Margaret decided to hold the pool party she had planned. Unusually for a Georgia autumn, the temperature rose to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, making it perfect weather for swimming. She prepared the yard early in the morning, checked the pool water temperature, and prepared fruit salad and sandwiches that the children loved. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, David's car pulled into the driveway. Margaret greeted the family at the front door. David was wearing a casual work shirt and showed a relaxed expression for the first time in a while. Ashley wore a floral sundress and was holding Tyler's hand. 2-year-old Tyler was wearing a small blue swimsuit and was already flushed with excitement. "Mom, what lovely weather!" Ashley greeted brightly and offered homemade brownies. "I worked late into the night, but I made Emma's favorite chocolate brownies." Margaret took the brownies while watching Emma get out of the car. Her 4-year-old granddaughter was still in regular clothes, carrying a small backpack, and seemed to be walking heavily. Previously, she would have been the first to run out to the yard. "Emma!" Its Grandma Margaret knelt down to Emma's eye level. "I was looking forward to playing in the pool with you." Emma smiled slightly, but that smile lacked its previous sparkle. "Hello, Grandma." Tyler was already running toward the yard. "Pool! Pool!" he shouted while walking unsteadily on his little legs. Ashley hurried after him. "Tyler, wait! You can't get in the pool yet!" David, as a father, watched his son's behavior with amusement. Tyler loves water. The other day, he got his clothes wet at the park fountain, and Ashley was troubled. Moving to the yard, Margaret had prepared a changing room for the children. Ashley took Tyler's hand and said, "Come on, let's change into your swimsuit." Tyler clapped his little hands happily. "Emma, let's change together too." Ashley called to Emma, but Emma shook her head. "My tummy hurts." Emma's voice was small, and she pressed both hands against her stomach. David approached his daughter with concern. "Are you okay? What kind of pain?" Emma looked up at her father and answered, "It hurts just a little, but I'm okay." However, anxiety was clearly visible on her face. "Leave her alone." David's voice was unexpectedly cold. "It's the usual thing. Recently, she makes excuses and doesn't want to participate in anything." Margaret was surprised by her son's reaction. Previously, David would have prioritized Emma's health above all else. Ashley also added in agreement, "That's right, Mom." Emma often doesn't want to participate in fun activities lately. It might be better to leave her alone and not interfere. The words, "don't interfere," stuck in Margaret's heart. Emma was a family member and should never be considered a nuisance. After Tyler finished changing in the changing room, Ashley led him by the hand to the poolside. "Mama, I want to swim!" His voice was filled with pure joy. Ashley smiled gently and said, "Of course, Tyler," but only in the shallow part at first, while taking her son's hand. At that moment, Margaret noticed something. There was a clear difference between the way Ashley looked at Tyler and the way she looked at Emma. Emma sat alone on a chair by the poolside, swinging her legs back and forth. She watched the rest of the family playing happily in the pool from a distance. Margaret sat down next to her granddaughter. "Does your tummy really hurt?" Margaret asked gently. Emma nodded slightly. "Yes, but I'm okay." "Is there anything you want to tell Grandma?" Emma seemed about to say something for a moment, but was interrupted by Ashley's voice. "Emma, time for hydration!" Ashley brought a water bottle and offered it to Emma. About 30 minutes later, Margaret headed to the bathroom inside the house. Her aging bladder wouldn't allow her to sit for long periods. As she walked down the hallway, she heard small footsteps behind her. When she turned around, Emma was secretly following her. "Emma, what's wrong?" Emma looked around and confirmed that no one else was there. Then, in a trembling, small voice, she said, "Grandma, actually, Daddy and Mama." At that moment, Ashley appeared in the hallway. "Emma, there you are!" Her voice was bright, but there was a sharp light in her eyes. "It's time for your medicine. I brought medicine that will help with your tummy ache." Margaret frowned. "Medicine? Is Emma prescribed something?" "Oh, we got some mild stomach medicine from the pediatrician." Ashley took out a small white pill for her recent stomach pains. "David knows about it too." Emma looked at the medicine and showed a clearly reluctant expression. "I don't want to take it, but it will make your tummy feel better," Ashley said gently, but her hand was firmly gripping Emma's shoulder. "Come on, let's go to the kitchen together." Margaret felt something was wrong. What was Emma trying to say? And why did Ashley appear at that exact moment? "I'll come with you," Margaret said, but Ashley shook her head. "It's okay, Mom. Emma and I will be fine alone. We shouldn't keep our guests waiting." Emma turned around and gave Margaret a look that seemed to be asking for help. However, Ashley was already taking her hand and heading toward the kitchen. Margaret was left alone in the hallway. Her heart was beating fast. Her nurse's intuition told her that something was fundamentally wrong. Emma's expression, Ashley's behavior, and her son's cold reaction. Everything was starting to connect. When she returned to the yard, David was playing in the pool with Tyler. "Mom, where did you go? Where's Emma?" "She's taking medicine with Ashley. She's been having stomach trouble lately." Margaret was appalled by her son's indifference. Previously, David would have prioritized his daughter's health above all else. 10 minutes later, Ashley and Emma returned to the yard. Emma's face looked a little pale. "She took her medicine, so she's fine now," Ashley said brightly. However, Margaret noticed that Emma had tears in her eyes. Her 4-year-old granddaughter was desperately trying to communicate something, and that voice was being silenced by adult convenience. The party continued until evening, but Margaret's heart was heavy. When the family was leaving, Emma turned back one last time to look at her grandmother. What was reflected in those small eyes was a light asking for help. 3 days later, Margaret made up her mind and called David. She had been unable to sleep for nights, worried about her granddaughter's condition. "Could I take care of Emma this Saturday? I'd like to spend time with just the two of us for the first time in a while." David seemed a little surprised. "Of course, that's fine. But is there any special reason?" "I just want to treasure time with my granddaughter as a grandmother. You and Ashley need time alone together sometimes too, don't you?" "That's true. Ashley seems tired lately, so it might be just right." On Saturday morning, David brought Emma over. Ashley said she had errands and didn't come along. Emma was carrying a small pink backpack and still seemed listless. "Where's Tyler?" Margaret asked. Ashley took him to her parents' house. She wanted to introduce him to his grandparents. After David left, Margaret decided to make pancakes with Emma in the kitchen. It used to be Emma's favorite activity. However, today, Emma's hand mixing the batter was weak, and she occasionally stared blankly out the window. "Emma, you can tell Grandma anything," Margaret said gently. "If you're worried about something or if something unpleasant happened." Emma stopped stirring and looked up at Margaret. In those big eyes was a deep sadness that seemed almost adult-like. "Grandma, will you promise me that you won't tell anyone?" Margaret's chest tightened. "Of course, Emma. Grandma will absolutely keep her promise." Emma began to speak in a small voice. "Ashley, Mama is mean to me when Daddy isn't there." "What kind of mean things?" Margaret knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Even when Tyler breaks my toys, she says it's my fault. And she gives me less food and says, 'You're too fat.' But she tells Tyler gently, 'Eat more.'" Margaret's hands began to tremble. "What else?" "At night, after Daddy goes to sleep, Ashley Mama comes to my room and says, 'You're not part of this family.' She says, 'Your real Mama isn't here anymore.'" Tears began to flow down Emma's cheeks, and that white medicine is bitter and makes me feel sick. But if I don't take it, she gets angry. Margaret hugged Emma with trembling hands. "Emma, thank you for telling me it's going to be okay now. But when I tell Daddy, he doesn't believe me. Ashley Mama says it's Emma's imagination." At that moment, Margaret noticed something. There were small blue marks on Emma's arm. "Emma, what happened to this?" Emma tried to pull down her sleeve to hide it. "I fell down." "Really?" Emma shook her head. "Ashley Mama said it was my fault when Tyler was naughty, and she grabbed my arm really hard." Margaret remembered her nursing training and calmly checked if there were other injuries. There were also small, scratch-like marks on her back. "Emma, this too. She scratched me with her nails, but she told me to tell Daddy that a cat scratched me." Margaret's heart was filled with anger and sadness that her granddaughter, at only 4 years old, had been carrying such pain alone. In the afternoon, while Emma was napping, Margaret carefully took photographs. She needed to keep them as evidence. Then she called David. "Can you come right now? I have something important to talk to you about regarding Emma." "Did something happen?" David's voice was tinged with agitation. "I can't talk about it over the phone. Come alone." An hour later, David arrived. Margaret confirmed that Emma was still sleeping before inviting her son into the living room. "Sit down, David. Listen to everything I'm about to tell you until the end." Margaret told everything she had heard from Emma in detail. David's expression first showed confusion, then became negative, and finally turned pale. "That can't be true. Ashley loves Emma. She's gentle in front of me." "That's the problem, David. She only shows her true nature when you're not there. But Emma sometimes tells lies. Look at this." Margaret showed him the photographs she had taken. David looked at the photos and was horrified. "This is Emma's arm and back, injuries made by Ashley." At that moment, Emma woke up and came downstairs. When she saw her father, she showed a momentarily frightened expression. "Emma, come here." David called his daughter with a trembling voice. Emma cautiously approached her father. David gently looked at his daughter's arm and began to cry. "Emma, I'm so sorry Daddy couldn't protect you." That night, David went home alone. Margaret decided to keep Emma overnight. She needed to ensure her daughter's safety before directly confronting Ashley. The next morning, David called. "I talked with Ashley last night. At first, she denied it, but when I showed her the evidence, she gave up. And then, we're getting divorced. I'll get custody of Emma. Ashley said that child isn't mine. She said she only considers Tyler her child and will take only him and leave." David's voice was exhausted. What was I doing? I couldn't even notice my daughter's suffering. "What's important is that you notice now, David. From now on, you can protect Emma." "Mom, could you take care of Emma for a while until I get the house situation sorted out?" "Of course, I'll protect Emma." After hanging up, Margaret hugged Emma. Her 4-year-old granddaughter smiled with what seemed like relief for the first time. "Grandma, I don't have to take that medicine anymore." "You never have to take it again, Emma. You're safe now." The divorce proceedings were more turbulent than expected. Ashley initially demanded not only custody of Tyler, but also child support and alimony. However, when evidence of Emma's abuse was presented, her attitude changed completely. "I only want to protect Tyler," Ashley claimed through her lawyer. "That boy is my everything. I don't care about other children." Those cold words made David fully understand Ashley's true nature. After 3 months of mediation, Ashley gained custody of Tyler and decided to return to her home state of Tennessee. In exchange for David waiving visitation rights, he was also exempted from paying child support. Emma was receiving sessions twice a week with psychologist Dr. Ramirez. For the first few weeks, she continued to have nightmares and was sensitive to loud noises. However, surrounded by the love of Margaret and David, she gradually regained her original brightness. 6 months later in spring, Emma said for the first time that she wanted to get in the pool. In Margaret's yard, Emma's laughter as she played in the water with her father was filled with the same innocence as before. "Grandma, look! I learned how to swim!" Emma splashed the water with her small hands and shouted happily. Margaret clapped her hands with tears in her eyes. "That's wonderful, Emma." David adjusted his work hours at the company and began spending more time with Emma. They often had dinner together at Margaret's house, and Emma's routine became doing homework at the dining table while telling her grandmother about her day. "Today, I became friends with Sarah at school. She said her mother is in heaven, just like me." Emma had turned 5 and could naturally talk about her deceased mother. Margaret gently shared memories of Sarah while showing photographs. One night, before getting into bed, Emma asked Margaret, "Grandma, are we a real family?" Margaret placed her hand on her granddaughter's cheek. "Family isn't just about blood relations, Emma. People who love each other and protect each other are family. You and Daddy and I are connected by the strongest bond in the world." David was growing as a father. Previously, he had used work as an excuse to neglect his family, but now he actively participated in his daughter's school events and never missed reading bedtime stories every night. When autumn came again, Margaret was planting flowers in the garden with her granddaughter. Emma was digging in the soil with a small shovel and asked, "Will these flowers bloom next year too?" "They certainly will. If we take good care of them, they'll bloom beautifully every year." Emma buried the seeds in the soil with a serious expression. "Then our family will get stronger every year too." Margaret's heart warmed at her granddaughter's words. She could feel that true bonds transcending blood relations were definitely growing among the three of them. On Christmas morning, Emma jumped up and down, saying for the first time, "It turned out just like I asked Santa." Under the tree were the picture book she had wanted and a new swimsuit. "I'm going to swim a lot in Grandma's pool next summer," Emma smiled, hugging the swimsuit to her chest. That night, as the three of them sat on the sofa together, Margaret quietly thought. The form of their family had changed, but their love had become deeper and more certain. She had learned over this past year that bonds transcending blood relations are what create a true family.